I will call to order this meeting of the Select Board on May 18th at 5:00 p.m. This meeting is being held in person and/or remotely as an alternate means of public access pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023 and all other applicable laws temporarily amending certain provisions of the open meeting law. You are hereby advised that this meeting and all communications during this meeting may be recorded by the Town of Hingham in accordance with the open meeting law. If any participant wishes to record this meeting, please notify the chair at the start of the meeting in accordance with Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20F, so that the chair may inform all other participants of said recording. Is anyone else recording? Okay, seeing none. Just note for the record, participating today are myself, Liz Klein, Chair, and Select Board members Joe Fisher and Bill Ramsey. The first item on the agenda is discussion and potential vote to approve the contract with Colantino Incorporated for the construction of the public safety facility at 335 Lincoln Street, Hingham, Massachusetts. And I will turn it over to Tom for the presentation.
Great. Thank you very much, Liz. So this is an exciting day, something that has been long coming. Looking forward to signing this contract and beginning this this work. To that end, we've had a masterful team at work in the preparation for this day. And I'll go through some introductions and we'll hear from a few different people as we go through this this agenda item. First, from Hill International, who is our owner's project manager. We have Paul Callis, Matt Hennessy, and Susan McCann. They are actively working in different capacities as our OPM for the town. We also have Bob Garrity here from he's the chair of the Public Safety Facility Building Committee for the town as an appointee of the board. Chiefs Murphy and Jones are here as well. And we have Kathy Riley, who's Hingham's procurement manager, and John Coughlin, our town council. I think that's everybody. J.R. Fry is our town engineer. He's here as well. So I think we have the full gamut of, we're able to provide and answer any questions that might come up. To that end, I think I'll turn it over to Bob and let Bob start us off. Oh, and I'll note that in your packets is a series of information, some notes from Bob. We have the contract itself. A couple of slides that Paul Callis will walk us through. We have well, I mentioned the contract itself. So there's a bunch of helpful information in there in your packets, should you need to note those. All right, Bob, sorry, go ahead. Oh, you're muted, Bob. Oh, you got to unmute. There we go. Now try it. There you go.
How about now? We all set now?
You're good.
Okay, well, good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for inviting me to present the initial statement on why we would like you to award this construction contract. Earlier today, I sent out a memo to the select board members outlining the bid process that the town followed to receive subbids and general bids on the public safety facility project. Now, the bid procedure that applies to large public building construction projects in Massachusetts is a very complex procedure. The town followed all the applicable statutory and regulatory requirements. The first step is we pre-qualified a large number of filed subbidders and general bidders who applied to bid on the project. We then received a large number of subbids and general bids. We reviewed all those subbids and general bids. The bidding resulted in identifying Colantonio Inc. Colantonio is a general contractor working out of Holliston, Massachusetts, and we looked at their bid. They were the lowest bidder that submitted a general bid, and we determined that Colantonio Inc. had complied with all the bidding requirements, and they are the lowest responsible and eligible general bidder on the project at a total bid price of $41,975,497. Now, in the memo that I sent out to the select board members earlier today, I hope you've had a chance to read it, as long as you had a cup of coffee to keep you awake. But I was trying to tell you all the different steps we went through that are required by statute and how all those different steps fit together in what is a very complicated process. The purpose of the process is to make sure that sub-bidders and general bidders on contracts in Massachusetts, public construction contracts, are very are experienced, are highly qualified, have the proper assets and dollar values of work that allows them to be qualified to do work on large projects in Massachusetts. And in this case, the project budget is about $40 million, $42 million just for construction. And I guess that's probably like a mid-range of large projects in Massachusetts. But it's a big deal. We went through a lot of work on it. Everybody cooperated. The contractors and sub-bidders all cooperated well in complying with all the different requirements. And we're glad we're at the end of the process, and the process has resulted in our identifying a low bidder who is a very competent and able contractor, and that's Colantonio Inc. Now, as we go along, when there are any questions from the board members on what the procedures were in more particularity, be happy to take a shot at answering any of those questions. But the main point of today is to request that on behalf of the Public Safety Building Committee, request that the Select Board approve Colantonio Inc. and approve the award of the construction contract to Colantonio. Now, one of the major issues in the bidding process is that the bid price of Colantonio exceeded what our estimated construction cost was in our total project budget. Now, we have a total project budget that includes a whole long list of design costs, project management costs, all sorts of soft costs, bid preparation, bid filing costs, preparation of all the design documents and construction documents. We also have allocations in the project budget for construction costs. We usually refer to those as hard costs. The award to Colantonio is hard costs, it is construction costs. There are also, and I'll get to this in just a moment, there are also a number of allowances in the contract that are geared for, that are not part of the building construction project, but they are allowances that are contained within the overall project budget for the project, which has been totally funded by the town. We'll get into those in just a moment, and Paul Callis will be talking a little bit more about what the different project budgets are and what the allowances are and what the impact is on the overall project budget if we were to award the construction contract. Now, Colantonio's bid is $1,741,657 higher than the estimated construction cost that we've been carrying in the total project budget for the project. Therefore, part of the building committee's, an important part of the building committee's job was to try to determine if we could identify funding in the project budget that would help fill this gap, the gap being the $1,741,000 figure, which is the difference between the low bid of Colantonio and our estimated construction costs for the project. Now, the building committee, the town administrator, the owner's project manager, that's Hill, have had several meetings and exchanged a lot of information and documents to determine if we should accept the low bid by Colantonio. The primary objective has been to determine the best strategy for moving forward with construction and planning how best to deal with the $1.7 million gap or increase over our budgeted amount for construction costs. Now, the good news is that we can fund the construction contract within our existing funding. The bad news is that we will have to shift funds that have been assigned in the budget to various allowances that have been included in the budget to cover the additional costs of completing the project. Now, the four most easily identified allowances total $2.3 million. Those allowances for the purchase of furnishings and equipment, the purchase of fire station specialty equipment, the purchase of audio-visual systems, and the purchase of various technology that will be required to fully operate the building as designed. Now, all of these 2.3 million, none of these $2.3 million costs are included in the construction budget or the construction contract that Colantonio bid on. All of the work, it's important to point out that all the work necessary to determine precisely what types of equipment, what type of systems would fall within the budgets for these four major $2.3 million worth of allowances. It's important to point out that the work on determining exactly what we would be using to procure the items and systems that are in the allowances has not yet been done. The town, during the next year to 2 years, the town will be determining much more specifically what is required. And in this regard, we'll be working very closely with all the town manager, with the fire department and the police department to really hone in on exactly what they need in these budgeted areas for the allowances. And it's also important to note that we don't need the money to procure those services, those goods and services, because those goods and services wouldn't even be installed in the project until the completion of the project, the construction work, or at least the substantial completion right near the end of the construction project. But we would have to do all our, well, a lot of our procurement during, let's say, starting a year from now, right up to about 2 years from now. So basically, there's nothing prohibiting our ability to award the construction contract now, get on with the construction of the project, and then deal with the shortfall. Now, part of the, let's see, what we really need to do as a building committee in sync with the fire department, police department, project manager, is to figure out how best to defer tapping the different allowances, how much we can defer from those costs or even decrease in the allowance items in order to make up for the $1.7 million deficit in our budget which is necessary to award the construction contract. So that's what a lot of the discussion has been. We're really just starting that discussion now. And, you know, again, we have about 1 year to 2 years to iron out all the bits and pieces of that. Let's see, we also, as part of that, we've tried to look at what possible surpluses we think are going to happen already in our budget, and there are some, and that could be, you know, used for these types of the allowance items. And we've also looked at trying to determine if there are any alternative sources of funding besides the amount that's already been appropriated for this project that the town can identify. One good example of costs that might be available through the town process, and the town manager has looked into this, is there may be about $450,000 of work of dollars that have been granted by the federal government through the COVID process, the ARPA program apparently, and that apparently could potentially be used to offset $450,000 worth of the shortfall. So there are a lot of different bits and pieces to figure out how we're going to do this, namely to complete all the project by the end of say 3 years from now, 2 or 3 years from now. Now, we also expect we'll realize some savings in the soft costs for the project. We may have overestimated some of the costs. The actual cost may be less. And like one example is moving costs. We've been carrying, I think, 75,000 perhaps in the allowance fee. That might be I can't remember for sure, but it's about that amount of money. That's probably very high. And there might be different alternatives on how we could do some of the moving, and we'd have to be able to identify savings in that category, as well as a number of other categories that have already come up as we've gone through the process. Now, we've been keeping a very close look at all the costs on this project. At every building committee meeting, we're always going through the total project cost. So far, all soft costs that we've been incurring, and we've got very good software to track the different design, construction, and soft costs for the project. Okay, let's see. We also have budgeted and will continue to budget a fairly significant change order contingency. That's to be used for hard costs in the event that change orders arise, and inevitably there will be change orders that will arise during construction. We have to have that money to be able to address changes that could arise during construction. And if they're not approved or dealt with, it could cause delays in construction and disputes. So we're sitting on, I think it's about $1.5 million. And again, I'm sorry if I don't remember it off the top of my head, for a change order contingency. It's not a really large contingency, but it's not a bad contingency because this is new construction. You typically don't encounter too much change orders on new construction unless you hit some subsurface conditions. After we're through probably the first 6 months of the project, after we have the building going up, we should be able to take a very good look at the change order contingency to see if there'll be a surplus in the change order contingency, because most of the larger changes on a construction project will be encountered during the first 6 months of the project when you're getting out of the ground and then putting up the walls, basically. Okay, so, after considering all of the above issues, at our last building committee meeting, the Public Safety Building Committee unanimously voted to recommend that the Select Board award the contract to Colantonio. That was at our meeting on May 4th. We feel that it's absolutely essential to take this major step of awarding the construction contract now. Prices aren't going to come down. If anything, they are continuing to climb, and escalation of construction costs is an industry-wide problem. Chief Murphy and Chief Jones have also indicated that they strongly support proceeding with the award of the construction contract, even if funding of some of the items covered by the allowances has to be deferred. Paul Callis from Hill is available at this meeting tonight, and he'll make a short presentation that will provide further information on what are in the allowances, where there might be room for savings, and what we can really expect down the road, say a year or two from now. So thank you. I'd be happy to address any questions you might have having to do with the memo that I provided or any of the items that we just talked about. So thank you very much.
Liz, can I make a suggestion that we turn it now over to Paul Callis, to walk through, I think some of what Bob just covered, and I think Paul just has a couple of comments.
Sure. We'll hold questions to the end. Thank you. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
Okay, well, we distilled much of what, or some of what Bob had just presented here into a couple of slides. We've got in our project budget about currently 40,233,000, and the low bid from Colantonio was 41,975, leaving us a gap of 1,741,000. 1.2 million of that overage is from the filed sub bids that were on the that submitted bids that are within Colantonio's contract. And we have of those filed sub bids, there were 15 filed sub bids that were included. 6 of them were under budget, 9 of them were over budget, and you know, in the aggregate, 1.2 million above what was anticipated. So right now, you know, the gap that we're looking at is 1.7 million. Next slide, please. So in order to be able to fill that gap, we've got some potential sources that Bob spoke of that are within our budget. And we also have some other possibilities. And, you know, and I guess in order in which we would probably want to utilize them is maybe utilizing, with the select board's authorization, the federal ARPA funds of approximately $450,000. That is the call of your committee as to whether that could be done or not. And so we're keeping that out there because it hasn't been determined yet. Tom had indicated naming and dedication rights that are available from sponsors and benefactors that we might be able to use. And we do have a contingency fund within our budget for change orders. And we would estimate that approximately a year from now, after the building is out of the ground, the foundations are placed, the steel is up, and the risk of subsurface problems rearing their head to cause change orders has passed. There would be money that may be available in the change order contingency that could be used towards this gap. And then, you know, kind of the last item, and that's what this chart is here, is kind of a worst case scenario of temporarily utilizing funds from moving an FF&E and moving into the construction line item. So this chart has, you can see the along the top row here indicates what each of the columns are, the budget line items that we have, the current budget for them, and then what we would reduce and what the balance would be in order to be able to get to that to cover that gap. So the proposed the gap of 1,741,657. That's the target we need to get to in order to cover Colantonio's budget. And so utilizing some of these allowances here, we would recommend you know, utilizing all the money out of the moving, the FF&E, the fire station specialty and loose equipment, and the EAV, using that, and just a little bit of the technology allowance. That allowance we want to keep as whole as possible. That's like the last one we want to utilize. And in any case, by utilizing those, that will bring us to the 1,741,657 gap that we have. And if we're able to utilize the ARPA funds of $450,000, our gap actually reduces down to 1,291,000. And so it's a much smaller hill to climb as far as that gap is concerned. And again, there are some other sources that are within the budget and other places that we can use in the meantime in order to be able to get to that gap. However, awarding to our low bid, Colantonio, who is a very good contractor. They were pre-qualified. We've worked with them. We've got a good bid. It's not going to get any less expensive. As a result of that, we recommend that it would be in the town's best interest, at least from our standpoint as construction project managers, to make that award.
Great. Thank you, Paul. And just one last note is you also have in your packet a notice of intent to award signed by myself and the contractor. And that is contingent, of course, on this vote tonight. So I, as your Chief Procurement Officer, have also recommended award. And I think that's everything, Liz.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Tom. And thank you, Paul and Bob, for presenting. And thank you, Bob, for the memo. That was really helpful earlier today. Certainly, this has been a long time coming. And Bob, we are grateful for your leadership and the Public Safety Facility Building Committee, all of the work, all of the due diligence. Certainly, this is a complicated and very rigorous process, which I think is good. It gives us confidence in the work that's been done so far. And certainly the bid documents and the agreement are complicated as well, but do seem very thorough. I just have a couple questions and then I'll pass it over to my colleagues. We talked a little bit about the change order amount, and I know it's outlined in Article 6. Could you just talk through that process, what that looks like?
Sure, just the process.
Yes.
Well, the process is anytime the contractor or an owner can generate a change audit, but let's just assume most change audits arise through the contractor. They encounter some sort of an issue on the project. Let's say let's say they dig down and they hit something that some subsurface condition that wasn't anticipated in the construction documents, in the bid documents, and the studies that led to the bid documents, where we took a lot of borings, we took a lot of tests to make sure there aren't any hazardous materials out there. So far, so good. Although during the design phase, we really looked to see what we were going to encounter. In any event, sometimes you hit something that you didn't expect to encounter. In that type of a situation, the contractor would immediately notify the people on the site. Paul's outfit and Paul would notify us, they'd investigate whatever the condition is, and let's say it had merit. Then there would be a negotiation in the field on how to proceed in order to remove whatever the unanticipated condition was. There'd be exchanges of documentation would go through as far as the procedure for moving it, the dollar value of moving it. If you can't agree to a dollar amount, then you give them a not to exceed so much money. With the contract, we have to document every single hour, every day, every piece of equipment, for how long and what the value was of that cost. They'd package all that information, submit it as a change order request to the project manager. The project manager would review it and take it up with the building committee and present it to the building committee to determine if the project manager recommended it, and we would have to concur, the town would have to concur that a change order was due. So change order is very, very common. In fact, they're on every project, especially a project this large. But the project manager is a very good project manager. They know exactly how to manage it. It's a good construction contractor. There's no reason to think that they would be, unduly obdurate about being fair and reasonable. And if they're not being fair and reasonable, we have very clear provisions in the contract that allow us to direct them to do the work under protest. If we don't agree with them, they can still claim a change, but they have to direct the work under protest. We don't pay them anything if we believe it isn't a change, and ultimately they might have a claim that they could try to proceed against us. But this is okay.
Great, that's helpful. Thank you. And you referenced how the change order in terms of materials and labor, is that how the monthly invoicing process would work as well? Just for the regular payments? Is that a set amount, or are you actually counting, what work was done in that month?
Yeah, monthly payments, these are all regulated by statute. The statute is part of the construction contract under payment procedures. Until you've been through it about 100 times, it might be a little complicated. And it is complicated, but basically the construction contract, one of the first orders of business that Paul will be negotiating with the contractor in the field will be getting what they call a schedule of values. You'll have the total contract price, let's say $41 million. The contractor will agree with us on a schedule of values for every single major work item on the project. That schedule of values, the percent of work that's done on a monthly basis at the end of the month when the contractor bills, they will include a request for, let's say, $1.72 million. That will be backed up by voluminous information saying exactly what items on the schedule of values they did work on, what the percent of completion is for those particular items. Maybe they're 22% of digging a hole, I don't know. And Paul's outfit would monitor that. We'll have people in the field full-time tracking all that information. And eventually the contractor on a monthly basis will present a draft invoice to Paul's outfit. They'll hammer things out and eventually reach an agreement that Paul will say, yes, we support payment of this amount on the schedule of values. So that monthly invoice comes in, Paul will tell us it's a good idea to pay it, they're due this amount of work. And assuming that we agree with them, which you almost always agree with your project manager, that amount would be the amount that we would pay. If the contractor thought that he was entitled to more money than what he's getting on a periodic basis, but basically they get paid on a percent of work basis based on a schedule of values.
Okay.
Very, very seldom do you really have disputes. I think Paul would agree that you really don't have disputes with contractors of this caliber over how much money they're entitled to. Because if they don't get it this month, they'll pick it up the next month.
Sure.
So it's not like a monthly contract, it's a lump sum contract for the whole enchilada.
Right. Okay. Excellent. That's helpful. Thank you. And I know that the subcontractors were pre-qualified. Just curious if Colantonio has worked with the 15 that are being included here, if they have experience with them.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know that. I'd suspect they probably have a lot of experience with them.
Okay.
Colantonio did carry in their bid. They carried the lowest sub-bid price for each one of the 15, I think it was, sub-trade categories.
Okay. Okay. Excellent. Thank you. All right. I will turn it over to Bill for any questions or comments.
Thank you. Paul, could you go back to your second slide about how we're going to make up the deficit?
Sure.
Just give me a second.
Oh, no problem. Well, while you're getting it up, I'll start. I can kind of start here. We have access to $450,000 in ARPA funds. I thought we exhausted all of our ARPA funds.
But we do. Michelle, can you take that one?
Yeah, so Bill, there's one last pot from Plymouth County that's available. There's about 473,000 total left. This falls into the bucket of like the lost revenue. We didn't initially expect that from Plymouth County, but earlier this year, they kind of made an extra tranche available to the community. So that's the last bucket that we have for Hingham.
Well, so what, am I right that ARPA has to fit into one of 4 different categories?
You are right.
Yes.
The most flexible category is this lost revenue category that you can use for kind of general government services. including some capital projects. So we should double check with Tom O'Brien, the Plymouth County Treasurer, but it is in the most flexible ARPA category.
Okay,
Luke, can you
So-
go to the next slide here? I think is the one that,
the one day,
there
thanks.
we go.
Awesome. Thank you, Susan. Appreciate it. So is it available or we got to still check on it?
It's available to the town, but I think we should confirm with Plymouth County this use, just to be sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
and Bill, that's why we're not, because we're not 100% sure, we're not asking you to, the select board to authorize the use of that money in that way yet. This is a one of 4 potential ways that methods we'll use to close the $1.7 million gap.
Okay. On the fourth bullet down, FF and E. What's the E? That's furniture, fixing, and what?
Equipment,
Equipment. Okay, equipment. So what kind of equipment would we be putting aside to make up the shortfall?
the FF&E, the furnitures, fixtures, and equipment typically includes tables and chairs, all kinds of furnishings, interior furnishings of the, and then the equipment is like snow blowers, maybe a lift to change the light bulbs in the vehicle bay. Maybe you don't need one because you've got a hook and ladder there. I don't know, but you know, it's all of the various things that are needed to run the building that are not fixed, not installed as you know, connected to the wall or anything.
Got it.
And,
All right. So maintenance related type.
Yeah, and Bill, just on that, just real quick too, we had intended that if for some reason we end up having to forego some FF&E purchases, obviously we could backfill those with the capital budget over the course of 5-10 year window as needed. If there are critical items that there wouldn't be critical items that would be foregone. That, like, you know, we'll buy the things that we have to have. This is additional firefighting equipment that we have a fully functional fire department right now, fire station right now in the North Hingham. We would use all that equipment at the new station if we can't afford to buy new stuff for that new facility. If you follow,
Right, so it's equipment, it's not maintenance related. So what you described to me though is first responder necessary equipment. Paul just talked about snow blowers. So which one is it?
I think it's all of the above.
both.
Good.
Okay.
And the
How about-
Chief Murphy's here too.
What is it? I'm just concerned that we're not gonna, that, you know, the first responders not gonna get the equipment that they need. Chief, could you speak to that?
Yeah, I can. So there are some things that we would bring over from the current station. For example, we just got through a state grant, one of the turnout gear washers, that are about $10,000. We just got that within the last couple of years. So that would, you know, we'd probably bring over even the snow blower and stuff. You know, we have one down there that, you know, is not that old or anything. So some of that stuff we could bring over. It just really depends on what it is, you know. But most of, to be honest with you, most of the equipment in the station is, you know, the trucks and everything else. That stuff is obviously not included as part of this, nor is the hose or anything else that we have extra stuff. We would bring that, you know, over from the current station.
So, yeah, so I'm not so much concerned about snow blowers and things like that. I'm concerned about equipment that the firefighters need to do their jobs. So you're telling me I guess what I'm hearing is you're comfortable with this plan?
Yeah, we're comfortable with it. And, you know, talking with Paul and with Tom, the pricing that, you know, we're using is just a budget, you know, hold right now. We haven't actually gone out to bid on any of these things or anything else, so we don't know where it's going to come in, but no, I'm comfortable with it.
Okay, all right. Fine, I have some comments before we vote, but those are all my questions. Thank you, Liz.
Thanks, Bill. Joe, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. And I know a lot of hard work, time, dedication has gone into this, and we really do appreciate it. I do have just a couple questions. I know that when we did the special town meeting appropriated 46.7 million. And this bid is 41.9 million. But the 46.7 million is meant to cover more than just the construction. Do we have a spreadsheet that explains how the 46.7 million that was appropriated is allocated so we understand the constraint that we're facing here?
Yes, we do. I have to get it. Give me a few minutes, but
Well, I can keep going and then you
Yeah.
can look for it, because this is not the only budget, though it's clearly the largest one, that we should be looking for savings. So I just want to understand how the money appropriated from town meeting is allocated, and to figure out if there are other areas we should be looking at. And going back to the town meeting, the construction budget at town meeting was 39.6 million, is what the public was told. The slide is showing 40.2 million. So I'm wondering, and Bob, this may be a question for you, why there's a discrepancy between what we're saying is allocated for construction now and what was presented at town meeting in terms of the 39.6 million.
I can actually explain
Okay.
that. The difference is $750,000. That was an allowance for the security access system that was carried as a separate line item allowance, similar to the FF&E allowance and so forth. And there was a determination to make that work part of the construction contract.
Got it. Okay, so that would be the bump. But it was not, but it was moved from one category to the next as opposed to in addition. Is that
Yes, so it was moved from that line item into construction.
got it? Okay, that makes sense. Also at the special town meeting, what was printed in the warrant was that the facility would be completed and ready for occupancy in the fall of 2024. I'm wondering what the projected time schedule looks like now.
The time schedule was determined to be, as we were putting the end of the bid documents together, about a 20-month construction schedule, which is, I think, 608 days, calendar days. And that brings us to January, on the contract. The requirement would be, I believe, January 16th of 25.
Yep.
It's
So
a little bit after that, but you know, that's where it is. That's where it will be for Colantonio's contract.
and I'm assuming that the town would be getting regular updates in terms of where we are on that time schedule.
Absolutely.
Okay. Have you found that other spreadsheet, or should I keep going and we can?
I think I found it. I just gotta make sure I got the right one here. We're gonna be meeting with the Public Safety Building Committee meeting this evening, and this is actually a topic for that. Whoops. Joe, continue.
Okay, I'll continue. You'll get it. So I just have to ask what
Joe,
maybe. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Can I talk just for a moment, Joe?
Sure.
Joe, what you'll be seeing if Paul can identify it is every meeting we have, we get a detailed, we go through the detailed budget. It goes on for pages, many line items for all the soft costs, all the design costs, construction, OPM costs, survey costs, testing costs, and then all the construction related costs. And we track that every single meeting, and any invoices get charged against, we double check the budget to make sure it's a budget. So what I think Paul's going to be showing you is a very detailed budget for all the, here you go right there. Okay, sorry.
So I see. So that's basically, it
here
looks
we
like
go.
that's the 39 million there. So can we just drop to the bottom? You'll show me how it sums up to the town. Here we go. Okay.
Right at the very bottom on the left.
Yeah. Right. So that's the 46.7 million. And I know, we've had
And
other
it
months.
is, the 46.7 is part of the overall, all
Right.
appropriations that add up to 50,135,000.
Right.
And that paid for design, of the project over the last couple of years prior to last fall's town meeting.
Yep. So are there other expenses that have not yet been incurred outside of the construction budget that we should be looking at for potential savings?
Yes, in the section 50, the furniture, fixtures, and equipment, those are the allowances that have not been, I mean, there are allowances at this point. The work hasn't been designed, hasn't been bid. Temporarily, we're using portions of that money to fund the gap, as we illustrated in the slides earlier.
Right.
And but for the most part, many of the allowances and everything, if we go to the top of the spreadsheet,
Yep.
there is a column here, committed costs. These are the under that column, those are the actual contracts, purchase orders that have actually been allocated, that are committed to at this time. So construction, of course, is the biggest line item on the project, but that hasn't been, because the
Sure.
contract hasn't been signed. It hasn't, we haven't filled in that number in the column as yet. But there are just a handful of other ones that you see here that have $0 in it, that haven't been allocated yet, that can be sought for savings. So if you scroll down just a little bit slowly, you can see all these ones that are zeroed, that are have yet to be utilized.
Okay.
And that utilities, fees, gas and fiber allowance, $75,000. That one is one that we're hoping that we don't need to use too much. That help.
Right. I get the FF&E. I was looking to see if there was anything else beyond that we should be for targeting for potential savings, and I know you're looking hard as well, but I just want to understand, because obviously the construction is a subpart of the larger amount, and we're going to look at other areas just to make sure that there are not potential savings that will help fund the shortfall.
And said another way too, Joe, the more we can control the costs in construction, the less contingency fee we need to use there, and would be able to apply to the overage here.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So that construction contingency hard cost, the 1.6, that's what we were saying before is the change order money, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Yep.
Okay. Joe, did you have any other questions?
I do.
Okay.
I'll ask what may be a really dumb question. There's another company that's done business with the town, Collar and Colantonio. Is the contractor related to them? Is it an engineer? Do we
Don't know the answer to that.
Okay, I mean, it's a great company. I just didn't know if they were related. In terms of the key players, as we go forward, my understanding is, one of the key players, and not to downplay the OPM, but the designer or the architect, because am I correct that Council Booz needs to approve every payment before the town actually disperses funds?
That's correct. They need to certify the requisitions that are presented by the contractor.
Do we have anyone here from Council Booz?
I don't believe we do.
Because in terms of,
Not at this time, Joe.
yeah, I mean, in terms of managing the costs and reviewing and making sure that everything's done according to specs, it's their signature that's on the line. And I know the OPM is our advocate, if you will, but Castle Booze holds the key. And it would be helpful to hear, to make sure that they're on board with this process. And I'm surprised that they were not invited to participate at this discussion. In terms of the contractor, my understanding from the contract is that they designate a superintendent or a supervisor who's the person who's going to be in attendance at the project site throughout the construction. Do we know who that person is?
I believe we have it's identified in their documents, but I don't know. I couldn't tell you the fellow's name off the top of my head.
I mean,
He'll certainly be he'll be in attendance when we have the kickoff meeting.
Yeah, I mean, as a practical matter, that person is key to making everything run. And I just want to make sure that someone has reviewed that person's qualifications, is satisfied, and making sure that the superintendent or the supervisor is on board with what we're doing, and we're all comfortable with that. So sounds like we're waiting. We will find out, or you may already know about the superintendent.
Yeah, we'll be meeting them for the first time.
Yep. And could someone explain the process for the subs as for releasing liens as they're paid?
Well, as a public project, can
they assert a lien?
They can't. They cannot impose a lien. I believe there's something in the state regulations that forbids that.
Oh, that's great. I didn't realize that. So, so there's no release of lien process that we need to follow?
There isn't, but I believe we do have a requirement in the contract. Sometimes we're just concerned making sure that subcontractors get paid.
Yep.
And if we have some reason to believe that they're not, we may force Colantonio to obtain those
Right.
From their subs.
Okay. And again, it would be Castle Booze who would review it and make sure that that's all in order before they release the funds.
Yes. Yes, they take a lot of advice from us on completion of work.
Yeah.
They do their own site inspections, of course, through the project. Okay.
Could you talk, and I'm not sure who the right person would be to talk about this, just because as this construction proceeds, there'll be noise, debris, potential interruption of traffic, that you're satisfied that the steps have been planned for to make sure that those issues are minimized?
Yes, they're in the contract. They are required to minimize those. We work closely with John Coughlin in developing a construction management plan that requires the contractor to delineate those requirements in an actual plan that shows where the fences are, where the portable toilets are, where the gates are, where the wheel wash is for the trucks before they leave the site, all of that. And that's an important topic at the kickoff meeting, is making sure that they're well aware of that and have that planned out, and we have them explain how they do that.
Will you have a phone number posted or something so that if people have issues, they know to whom they should address those concerns? I know that topic came up for the Foster School, and they really had lines of communication set up. So if neighbors had any issues, it was clear how that was going to be managed from a communication standpoint, from a public relations standpoint, are we going to have a similar arrangement here?
Yes, the gentleman on the, that's actually in the meeting here, Matthew Hennessy, is our full-time site representative. He will be the person that will be, whose cell phone will get those calls if and when they come up.
It's not going to be Tom Mayo?
Well, it could be, but it would, you know. when it
That was-
comes to
that was
items that
intended to be a
happen on the
joke.
site that have to
That
happen
was a joke, Paul.
Real time, it's
At OPM.
us.
Thank you, Matthew.
That's right.
That's-
One final, it's really not a question at this point, because I went over this with Tom, just making sure that we've done the due diligence in terms of the financial health of the contractor. Tom, are you satisfied?
I am.
Okay, great. That's all I got. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Joe. Bill, did you have some additional comments?
Before we vote, yes.
Okay, do you want to make them now?
Are you gonna take public comment, or are we gonna go out to deliberations?
Well,
Anybody?
okay, I didn't know if you wanted to add something first. Are there any comments or questions from members of the public? I don't see any. Do you see anything, Rochelle?
Nope.
Okay. All right, go ahead, Bill.
Great, just a couple points. So I think projects of this size and nature we usually get about 4 or 5 GC bids. I think the nature of the way things are with the economy right now, a year ago, the price of lumber was through the roof. Those prices have come down, but the price of metal is very high right now, and the cost of labor is significantly higher than normal. But I mean, all things considered, I hope that the 450 is there from ARPA. I'm not sure if it will be or not, but let's hope it is. But if there's a lesson that we learned from Foster School, is that the longer you wait, the more expensive these projects get. So if we had done Foster School years ago, it would have cost probably 1/3 of what it's costing us. So waiting is not going to make this project any cheaper. This is the best bid we got. So I'm prepared to move forward.
Thank you, Bill. Joe, do you want to provide any additional comments?
No, I think Bill is exactly right. And I know he's aware of all these costs because he's doing a home renovation coming up. And so I hope it's not of this magnitude. Bill.
I don't have the metal needs that this project needs. Thankfully.
That's right. But costs, I know, are an issue. I think we need to be attentive to how this gap is going to be filled. I'd hate to have a great building and our police and fire move in with not the best equipment, not the best furnishings. We really need to think about how we can move forward with this. I'm not hesitating about moving forward, but I think it's a vigilance. I know Bob Garrity and his committee are on top of this. I got a lot of faith in their ability to manage this. In many ways, I think our board can be a resource for Bob, figure out what we can do. He may call us and say, go organize a fundraiser. And we'll do it because I think the three of us want this to succeed. We want it to be a stellar project. So with that, I am prepared to move forward.
Excellent, Joe. I agree with you both. I don't think waiting is an option, or certainly not a good option. I'm comfortable with the bid from Colantonio. Obviously, I wish the budget was a little different, but all things considered, it does seem fair and certainly less. This is obviously the lesser of the two bids. So I am comfortable with it and moving forward. And Bob, definitely call on us to help with, finding efficiencies or other options. Certainly, we'll be working on the naming bylaw policy, and that may play a role here. And I will plan to work closely with Michelle on the ARPA funds as well. But I think, I'd love us to have really often and frequent conversations so that we can stay on top of this and help find any efficiencies as we move forward. Certainly, we want this to be an excellent, high quality building and have all of the things that are necessary for our public safety professionals. This is certainly a big project, a big capital project that this community has been working on for a long time. It's a very big dollar amount, and as the financial stewards of the town, we're taking that quite seriously. But we also want it to be a really high quality building with the latest technology, built for the future, really to set up our fire department and police department for success. So with all of that, I am comfortable moving forward as well. There any other questions or comments? Okay, I'm ready to take a motion.
I'd make a motion to authorize the chair to execute the contract with Colantonio Incorporated for the construction of the public safety facility at 335 Lincoln Street, Hingham, Mass, and the form attached here too.
Second,
Roll call vote. Joe,
aye.
Bill,
Aye.
and I'm an aye as well. It passes unanimously.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody. Excellent. We have public comment on the agenda as well. Are there any members of the public that would like to make a comment? I don't think anyone's with us. All right, seeing none, I'm ready to take a motion to adjourn.
Liz, before we do that motion, I think congratulations are in order for the team that's assembled here. You heard our chair reinforce the fact that you've got our support, and we don't take this project for granted. We know how important it is for the town, and we intend to back you up 100%.
Absolutely. Yes, congratulations.
Yes.
And thank you, everyone. Bob, thank you. Please pass on our thanks to the entire committee. Thank you, Paul, and your team, and certainly look forward to the kickoff meeting.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor by roll call vote, Joe,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
and I'm an aye as well. We are adjourned.